Are you ready to take your business to the next level? Every day there are countless books and articles that are published offering the key on how to make your business a success. It's easy to feel overwhelmed trying to keep up and run your business. That's why Deb Creer created the Business Power Hour. Keep up on the latest trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. Let the Business Power Hour do the heavy work for you.
Good morning, good morning. I am Deb Creer, and I am passionate about giving professionals the tools that they need to make themselves and their businesses as successful as possible. And today we're going to be talking about a fascinating subject. So let's just jump right in and welcome Richard Parker to our program today. Welcome, Richard. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
Perfect. Well, let me tell people a little bit about you, and then we will jump into this.
Perfect.
So Richard Parker is the founder of Diomo Corporation, the Business Buyer Resource Center, and he is the author of How to Buy a Good Business at a Great Price series. He has purchased 13 of his own businesses and has been an advisor and broker to small business buyers and sellers for over 3 decades. He has written and been featured in more than 300 articles on this subject of buying businesses by places like the New York Times, Entrepreneur Magazine, and TheStreet.com. He is also a weekly contributor to Forbes Magazine. Richard was recently nominated for Inc. Magazine's Entrepreneur of the Year Award. His fascination with getting others involved in businesses started at his young age when he recruited 7 neighborhood children as paper carriers, then successfully approached the local Sunday paper to grant him a master route with the idea of letting them solicit home delivery where there was none previously. So he subcontracted the other kids and took a percentage, of course, of their business. And so his career was born. The businesses have changed in 30 years, but his excitement remains. So again, Richard, how are you? And welcome to the program.
Well, I'm doing great. Thank you. And as I said before, I appreciate you having me. I think you had mentioned this is podcast potentially 949, which is unbelievable.
942, but
942.
Just, yeah.
Okay, so let's do 7 of these and then we'll get this 949.
That'll work. Perfect.
You should be congratulated. That's pretty unbelievable.
Thank you. You have such great information. We could do those others, podcasts to get us to that number. Well, I just talked a little bit about how you kind of got started. But tell us more about how it is that you decided that this is your passion in life.
Well, I know you alluded to a story that I love, and it's probably still my most enjoyable one that I tell when I started a business, and then like to say I at 12 and sold it profitably at 13, and always had entrepreneurial blood running through my veins from a young age, and always working. I come from a very lower middle class background, and so it wasn't handout time. You wanted some extra bucks.
You had to work.
You had to work. There was no choice if you wanted a few extra dollars in your pocket. And then when I finished school, high school, and in 2 years of college, and I grew up in Montreal, and there's 2 years of college, similar to a community college in the US. And then you go on to university, and that's in Quebec. There's just 3 years at university, unlike typical 4. I completed the 2 years of college. I didn't go to university and started working and my first couple of jobs were more in sales and working for family. And then I started working for a consumer products company in 1984, which the company was growing by leaps and bounds. It was doing phenomenal. Consumer products, toys, sporting goods, etc. And I was very lucky because the company was growing so quickly. I found myself in a position where the company couldn't hire fast enough. And so I had a nice relationship with the owners. The company was just about to go public. And so I was promoted rapidly, more from a standpoint of them not having the bodies. I mean, I was way over my head, no question. But I was working 100 hours a week because I was trying to learn like crazy, and I've always been fascinated with learning and felt that that's because I didn't attend university. That would be my, I had to learn on my own.
Kind of the school of hard knocks.
The school of hard knocks, the old grit school, right? And I worked for this company. for 6 years and ultimately became an executive vice president, running a large division. And then through sheer brilliance, I don't put those in quote marks, through sheer brilliance, I bought stock in a company called Worlds of Wonder, which was one of the toys that we were distributing. And someone told me about this wonderful idea of how you could buy stocks on margin, meaning you put up half the money to get double the stock. And it sounded wonderful. And said, and when you sell the stock, when stock goes up and you sell it, you at that point you repay the difference. Well, that sounds terrific, except they didn't tell me what happens if the stock goes down.
If the stock goes down,
and the stock absolutely shit the bed, pardon my French, and went to, and I found myself at 29 years old, I lost $60,000, which was pretty much close to everything that I'd saved up at that point. I had my first child on the way, now 4 children and a grandchild, and realized that the only way I love my job, but and one of our division was potentially being sold. And I realized that the only way I'm going to get out of this mess is I've got to put myself in a position to be where I don't have any limit on my upside of earnings. Like I could have changed jobs, but I was young. No one was going to pay me a lot more. I was making $72,000 a year at that point, which was probably today's equivalent to $200,000. And no one was going to hire me. I was 29 years old. They wouldn't be paying me more. And so I realized that I've got to get into my own business. And when I looked at the options that are available within going to your own business, either a startup or buying an existing business, a startup, it became apparent to me quickly that a startup, I'm starting from ground zero. There's nothing in place. I'd have to sink a lot of money, and I didn't have a lot of money. I had a few bucks left, not much. So I'd have to sink money into, and you never know what's happening with a startup. When you're planning it, everything sounds wonderful, but you have nothing to base it upon. And realize that it's an absolute guess. And anybody who says it's an educated guess, I think is really misleading themselves, because it's an educated guess based upon information that you typically try to sell yourself on, right? You find information or people that validate your idea versus getting people who challenge your idea. And so recognized that buying an existing business was probably the way to go. And I did. I acquired a small company that was a manufacturer's representative, and I was able to take one of the lines where I was working before and bring it in there. And I ran that business. It was after about probably around 6 months, and the company was doing okay. I still hadn't got to the point of the recovering my income level, but I was on a good path, and said, realize that if I'm going to grow this business, organic growth, while it's probably fun and romantic and sounds interesting and all that, that the idea of growing the business through acquisitions would make a whole lot more sense. And so I started looking at acquiring some smaller companies creatively, even though I didn't have a lot of experience. And going back in time, I did some pretty stupid things. But I acquired companies that I could bolt onto my existing business. And I made it a rule for myself that I would live on the income of my first business, so that I would use the second, third, fourth, and any subsequent businesses to all the cash flow that it generated to put rolling it back in, rolling it back in, and to pay down the debt for the acquisition. And I acquired a number of companies during that period, and that took me to about 1996. And I had acquired the rights to Sega Video for Eastern Canada. And that was just at the time that Sega flipped the market share with Nintendo. They introduced the Sega Genesis. I don't know if you remember those ads. You go, Sega, remember those ads? And that it had nothing to do with me. I just happened to be in the right place at the right time. I had helped someone who was looking to acquire a line at a mass scale for Canada. And that business exploded. My little business went from $2.5 million to $30 million in a little over a year. And what happened was exactly what I knew was going to happen. Was I started making more money than the entire senior executive level at Sega, and they were going to buy me out. And when I went into the agreement with them, that was one of the conditions, that if they wanted to take away any counts or take anything over, they had to buy me out, which they did. And I decided at that point that I was tired of freezing my butt off living in Canada. And I had 3 young children at the time, and wanted to relocate, and I moved to Florida. And shortly after I got here, I was involved in one short-term venture. And then I started looking at acquiring businesses again. And I probably at that point acquired 8 or 9 of them, and said, I'd sold them before I left Canada, and said, I'm going to look to acquire a business down here in Florida, and started looking at one particular company, a distributor in commercial laundry equipment, Maytag washers, dryers for laundromats, dormitories, condominiums, etc. And this company had the distribution rights. They had parts and inventory. They had repair, and struck a deal with the owner. It was a very good deal. At that early on, as far as the terms and conditions were concerned, got very immersed into due diligence. and realized quickly in my due diligence as I dug deeper was the company, it was somewhat of a house of cards. I'm not suggesting there was fraud going on, but the owner had several entities. The entity went from taking the revenue from one, paying bills in the other. Employees that were working for one were getting paid by another. And it was just like a plate of spaghetti. Oh, it's tricky. And it was really a plate of spaghetti. And the one thing I realized, the only thing I could figure out was that I'd never be able to figure it out. And so I advised the owner that I was not going through with the purchase. And I remember it like it was yesterday when I walked out of the business because I was doing some on-site due diligence. I remember standing in the parking lot and saying to myself, the average schmuck would have bought that business. And not because I'm that smart. I've just been doing it for a while. I was able to know where the skeletons are. Because it looked like a good deal. Absolutely. That's exactly. That's why I'd gotten to that point, well into the due diligence, purchase agreements in place. I'd spend money on attorneys and accountants. And only because I had done this so many times before and looked at so many companies that I was able to determine where I should be looking and also determine what I couldn't determine. Right. And it got me so intrigued about this whole market and world of buying businesses. Like, what does the average person do who's looking to acquire a business that doesn't have my level of expertise at that point? And I was lucky financially. I was in very good shape. And I said, I'm going to take some time off to really search the market. I spent a year doing research. This is back in 2000 and 2001. So it's not like the internet was as developed as it is now. So it's good old fashioned roll up the sleeves, get dirt on your fingernails research. But I investigated business owners who would acquire businesses, spoke to hundreds of business brokers, managed to through online and other resources speak to well over 100 prospective business buyers who never completed a transaction, others who had, some who had done well, some who had gone south, and read every book on the subject. And what I realized is there was really no good resource for anyone who's looking to acquire a business for themselves, to be operational and wanting to understand the process. And one thing I learned along the way is a statistic which has not changed over the years. When I say not changed, it's gotten slightly worse, is that over 90% of the people who begin the search to buy a business never complete a transaction. And so I decided over the years, I had taken incredible notes in every deal. Everything that I thought of doing, what happened, what was the outcome, as a result of the outcome, what did I do? If they said this, what did I say? If there was this type of business, how I conducted the investigation. Very, very terrific notes with a stack of files like this deep from all the businesses I looked at. And I said, you know what? I'm going to try to help people. I'm going to take everything that I've learned at that point in my life, and I want to put it into a program that is really going to help people, take them by the hand and help them buy a business through all of the steps, teaching them what they need to know, what to do and how to do it. And the one thing that I learned through all of my research and my own experience was, even though there were some books and a little bit of information and some brokers and advisors, there was no hand holding for a buyer.
Right. No, and no soup to nuts type of thing.
Zero. And so for me, it was a case of saying, all I wanted to do was help people. And even I wrote everything up into a course, broke down the buying process into the 23 steps, walked people through every step of what they need to know and do and how to do it. And said, when I go, I'm going to put this course online. And when I do so, my only goal is to help people. I never thought it was going to turn into a business. I've told this story thousands of times where my wife asked me the night before we launched, how many think you're going to sell? And I said, if I sell one, and I help one person, I help one person buy the right business or avoid buying the wrong one, it's good enough for me. And we put it online, and here we are a number of years later with lots and lots of updates over the years. And
the resources you have are amazing.
Thank you. And we sold over 100,000 copies and helped tens of thousands of people acquire businesses. And, it's the most gratifying work that I've ever done. And 82%, unlike the 90% that I learned about, 82% of our clients who use our course and our support buy a business within 6 months. I make myself available to people free of charge. I send a reply to emails or get on the phone. And it's been an unbelievable journey. In parallel to that, I did a lot of, I did some more acquisitions for myself. I was involved with the Dalio family office for 4 years. They hired me, and I was involved as a partner to mentor one of their sons to buy businesses. And so here we are, lots of years later, and constant updates, and have helped a tremendous amount of people, and feel, it's so gratifying.
I love it. It is a little ironic that you started a business to tell people how to buy businesses.
Crazy.
I just love that. But more than anything, it shows that you are knowledgeable in so many areas. Because what it's like to start a business, and all of those things. But it was so interesting when I was reading your book, and folks, this is not a sit down and read overnight book. I discovered that because it's over 500 pages long, because it's not a book to be doing that. It is walking you through the process of buying a business. And so, it's not, like I said, it's not sit down and read it. But so much great information in there. And so I'm gonna, kind of pick some things out that I learned from it. One of the big things that you really talk about are the 10 commandments of buying a business. Well, wait a minute, let's take a step back first, because on my program, we do have a lot of people who are starting a business. They've got this fabulous idea. They got laid off. They had time during COVID, all of those things. And they think, I'm going to start my own business. And so that's a lot of what we talk about, how to do it legally, all of those steps that you need to take. But there really are incredible benefits to buying an existing business, because a lot of that stuff at the very start, I think, is why so many small businesses fail. They didn't set it up right legally, or they didn't find the right CPA, or wrong employees, or all of those various things. And buying an existing business, all that's already been done. And so talk to us a little bit more about why, it is just, and we're still going to have people who start brand new businesses, but why is it so advisable and maybe even preferable to buy an existing business?
So there's a couple of things there. And first of all, I want to thank you for reading the material, because that makes this conversation all the more meaningful, I believe. So I appreciate it.
I took notes. Yeah.
No, I know that. And one of the things you mentioned, it's not an overnight read. That's why I call it a program or a course, because it really is that, not to be intimidating with either one of those words. So let's go back to this idea of starting versus buying. And if someone is in a situation where it's a matter of capital, or it's a bit of a side hustle or whatever, and they want to start something that's great. But I think what you said specifically, as far as all the things that they don't have, that aren't in place, are all the reasons why I don't think starting versus buying. And I've seen it, repeatedly over decades. When you start a business, nothing is in place. I mean, you don't even have paper clips. You don't have everything sounds wonderful. Everything sounds terrific. You can convince yourself of anything, what the business is going to turn into, but you don't have anything have anything in place. I've also learned that, the plans that you have, revenues typically come in twice as slow, and expenses
at
least twice the amount. With buying an existing business, and when buying an existing business, all the things that you try to solve for when starting a business are already in place. And all the things you wrestle with starting a business are already in place. You've got employees, you've got customers, you've got revenue, you've got profits when you do it right.
You got
suppliers, you've got the legal groundwork, you have the professionals. You may choose to keep them or not, but there's accountants, there's attorney. You understand the entity, you understand the market, you know who the competition is, you know what the industry looks like. And so when you take a look at the cost of that, and I show people how to do this in a way that this is well within anybody's reach. When you add this up over the course of a couple of years, and I think the number is like, I think over the course of 5 years, 96% of all businesses fail. I mean, there's sometimes I hear numbers from 80 to 96, but whatever it is, the numbers are astronomical. And so you take the cost of those startups relative to the cost of what you have to put down on a business and what you can leverage. In the end, I believe that you wind up at least the same or ahead. Okay, as far as actual dollars are concerned, and you have a flourishing business. And the other thing with buying an existing business, when you do this the right way, okay, it's very simple. You get the keys to the place on Monday, and you can take a paycheck on Friday. And that's not an exaggeration. That's the goal.
And you do not do that when you're starting your own business.
God knows when you're getting a paycheck, if ever. And if in 20 to, and if you're lucky, but one of the 20 or 6% that succeed, who knows when that happens, right? And so for me, this is not a case where I could say, well, I could be the lawyer on either side of the table related to the argument. The argument isn't close.
Right.
If you are able to buy an existing business, it's like running a marathon and you're starting out at the starting gate as a startup business and you buy an existing business, you're at mile 20.
Right. And you're in shape and
you're in shape.
All of that.
I mean, if you do it really well, you're at mile 26.
Right.
So there's
you're almost ready to cross the finish line.
You're almost ready to cross the finish line. So, there's things that you're going to want to mold with the business. You want to put your stamp on it, etc. But you're so far down the road, and people generally look to start or business or get into entrepreneurship to either replace or generate an income. If that's the goal, and that by and large that is, if that's the goal, well, why wouldn't you want to get into a scenario where you can generate an income in a week?
Right. I love that. And one of the things that fascinated me, and like your book just walks people through the process, which is why we said it's lengthy. But the first thing is to figure out what you want. And what I loved was that you said, just because this is something you have always done, that might not be actually the business you get into. So, for somebody who is, say they've been an insurance salesman and they think, I'm going to buy an insurance business because that's my knowledge. Their knowledge is so much different than just that, and maybe they have all of these other interests, and I love that concept because I think a lot of people think, I know this, so I must buy that, and and they don't stop to think, and I love, it might be that it might not be the sexiest business in the world, but it might be the more profitable one, things like that. So talk to us more about those concepts.
Okay, so the overarching theme to that is as follows. Experience is not expertise. Experience is what you did.
Right.
Expertise is what you're good at. And so and it is much easier to learn an industry than it is to become proficient at a critical skill.
Right.
So with those things said, when the example used in the insurance business, the experience is within insurance industry, but the expertise more than likely is sales.
Right. Yeah. You are the person that goes and builds those relationships.
Correct. And so your skill set is sales. Your skill set is not insurance. That's your experience. Now, if you can find something in insurance that marries that skill set, great. You're a little further ahead, but it's an industry you can learn. The critical thing is, and what I tell people, and this is everything as it relates to buying a business, whatever it is that you do best has to be the single most important driving factor of the revenue and profits of any business you consider purchasing, because for everything else you can hire. And so when you look at that, as far as what type of business is right for you, that's everything, because you can do a marginal job on the other 22 steps of the business buying process. As long as you get that right, okay, you're going to be okay. Conversely, if you buy a good business and you're the wrong person to run it, that business is going out of business pretty quickly. And so it's critically important that not only that people understand how to drill down and learn, and I teach people exactly how to do this, how to determine what is that greatest skill set, but to understand the delineation between experience and expertise, that you can't even conjugate the two. They're completely separate and unique.
Right. And it is, you mentioned hiring to fill those deficits of your knowledge, your experience. We don't expect that we can go on YouTube and know how to do our own open heart surgery or even change our oil. We hire that done because we don't have that experience or that expertise. And so the wisdom teaches us that what we don't know, we should hire out. Now, some of it we learn, right? And that's perfectly fine. And some people think that's the greatest thing in the world. But, others, like my producer for this program is the master coordinator. She takes care of the scheduling. She contacts all the guests. I could do that. I've done that before in the past. I don't like doing that, and she does. So, it's allowing me to do what I want to do, and it's allowing her to do what she's good at.
Right. Well, there's a couple of really important points there, which is, when you talk about the YouTube or people looking at things, as long as you're smart enough to know that that is not necessarily good
Right.
information, right? Because you want a believable party. When we talked about hiring for everything, the beauty of buying an existing business is those people are in place.
Right.
And now some of them may not be perfect, so you can, move people around and bring on new people, but by and large, those people are in place. But as far as the knowledge base and understanding what you need, that's such a critical piece to all of this, is making sure that you acquire the knowledge, right, in order to do this successfully. And the example that you gave, someone looking from the outside at your podcast business would say, well, getting in touch with guests, soliciting guests, making sure they're the right people, understanding their background, making sure they're right for the show, that they got good personality, whatever the criteria may be. Well, that's the most important thing related to the business, but it's not. What's the most important thing for the business is you and your personality, because no matter how good your producer is, and I'm sure she's fantastic at getting the guests and getting it coordinated and organizing the schedules, if you're not terrific
if
at
I
your
can't
job,
carry on these conversations, right?
You won't have 942 shows. You're lucky to have two, because no one's going to listen to the third one. And so that's a perfect example of when someone's looking at a business, is what is the driver? The driver of the business is what drives the revenue and profits. In your case, and I'm not sure if you monetize this, but what drives your business is your personality. So if I'm coming in to buy the business, I have to make sure, if I'm going to be the owner operator, that I can, you leave your chair, I come into your chair, I sit down in your chair, and I could do what you do, because your producer can keep doing what she does and effectively. And if she decides that she's going to do something else in her career and moves on, or for whatever reason, you have to replace it. It won't be easy, but that is more replaceable. And hopefully you don't have a fight with your producer.
No, we don't replace her. She doesn't go anywhere.
Okay.
No.
I want to be careful going down this road, but you understand that conceptually that the tasks, and it may take two people to replace her, but they can be replaced versus replacing what the driver of the business is, and that's you.
Right. And you do have those important employees when you're buying another business. And we're assuming that we're buying a business, like we said, that has employees, that has those things. And one of the things, and you talk about this in the book, is to figure out who those important people are, and making sure that they stay, because that's, we've all seen it happen where the business sells, and for whatever reason, the people are like, nope, I'm out of here too. Now, maybe they were just so committed to that owner that they don't want to work for anybody else, and that's fine. Right. Or they might be family, right? A lot of businesses, and all those things. But part of the due diligence that you talk about is figuring out who all those key players are and actually talking with them. And I love that you do that, because in many cases, the business owner is like, no, you're not going to talk to my people. We're just going to have this as a surprise for them. That never goes well.
It doesn't end well. Well, it ends, because it ends on a bad note.
Yeah, because they felt betrayed, all sorts of
uninformed things. And what have you. There's a couple of ways to look at this. When there's key employees in a business, meaning those are individuals that are requisite to keep the business successful.
And or that might be like your head salesperson, or whatever it is, but
whatever they may be, but they're deemed to be key people, and they may be someone who holds a license that's integral to the business. You have to meet with them. And if the seller doesn't want you to meet with them, sometimes you have to keep that as the last contingency to the deal. You've verified all the financials, the leases, all the other stuff, and that's the last contingency where you can walk out of the deal. And I've had it recently where I advised the client, we kept that as the last contingency, so that 48 hours before closing, they can have a sit down with the employee. And if the seller doesn't allow that to happen, and there are key employees, it's very simple. You can't buy the business. End of story. End of story. And if you try to convince yourself that you're going to be okay, well, you may be, but you're taking a massive risk. Right. So the seller needs to understand that, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, without this individual on board, now the seller can't bind them, but without me knowing where they stand, okay, I can't move forward. Now, one of the other things to understand is, sure, sellers don't want to get the word out. And if you do this carefully, and all the parties are hold things dear to their vest, you could really protect this.
Because they're thinking we're going to lose clients and customers. Right. They're going to think the business is falling.
Right. Which is, so the ways to look at that are as follows. If it's true that the business is going to collapse when the owner leaves,
Then
right?
you don't want to buy it.
Amen to that. That's exactly it.
Mhm.
Okay. They're irreplaceable and you
Mhm.
don't want that type of
Mhm.
business. You have to meet with key employees,
Mhm.
and the employees, what sellers need to understand, the employees are actually, their jobs are safer with a new owner than an old owner.
Mhm.
Because the new owner knows nothing. They don't have any
Right.
history with
You
them.
need
They're
them.
totally dependent on them. The current owner knows
Mhm.
all their baggage
Mhm.
and all their problems and
Right.
all their
Mhm.
weaknesses. Whereas a new owner coming in, they want to take care of
Mhm.
everybody. They need all
Mhm.
the people.
Right.
It's critically important.
Mhm.
And so the overarching rule to all of this is determine who the key employees are. And
Mhm.
don't delude yourself. I mean, if you're talking about, for example, buying a commercial landscaping
Mhm.
business, you don't need to meet with the person who runs the lawnmower.
Right.
You need to meet with the team,
Mhm.
the team foreman
Mhm.
or the
Mhm.
manager. But you
Mhm.
don't need to speak, and I'm not being demeaning to the individuals that
Right.
are cutting the grass,
Mhm.
but you can hire those people all
Mhm.
day long. But you
Right.
need to speak with the manager at the
Mhm.
appropriate time. And if the
Mhm.
seller won't allow that to happen, then you cannot move forward on the business.
Mhm.
Similarly, if the business has too many key people that
Mhm.
you as a new owner
Mhm.
cannot take on their
Right.
roles. You
Mhm.
have to think really hard
Mhm.
about whether or not you're the right person to operate
Mhm.
this business. Because if you don't have the know-how of all
Mhm.
those people and some of
Right.
them start to leave, you don't even know how to
Mhm.
hire them. And so
Mhm.
if there's too many of those, if a
Mhm.
business is too highly specialized, and especially at your first acquisition, you
Mhm.
want to keep it simple if at all
Mhm.
possible. If it's too hard to figure out all these
Right.
things, it's probably too difficult a
Mhm.
business for you to own, at least at
Mhm.
this stage.
Right. Well, and you're going to be so consumed with trying to figure out all of those moving parts
Yes.
that you're not going forward, and you're not being, whatever it is, maybe you're the rainmaker, maybe you're whatever it is, because yeah, you become more of the manager as opposed to the owner.
Yes, correct. That's exactly the case. And being able to, and you're able to, you do a terrific job distilling it down, by the way. And that's exactly what
Mhm.
happens.
Right. Well, the other thing that I found very interesting is you talk about, and obviously it depends on the business, but to some degree, keeping the former owner involved in some way. And I think a lot of people assume, check is cut, they give you the keys, they're gone, they're out the door, you never talk to them again. But talk to us about why in some cases it's very important that they're still kind of around for a while.
And it could be for a number of reasons. It could be to provide some level of comfort with customers or
Mm-hmm.
customer suppliers and employees.
Mm-hmm.
Potentially, it could be that just
Mm-hmm.
cosmetic. Um, the most important thing is you need to learn the business from them
Right. Mm-hmm.
and what they do every day.
Mm-hmm.
Because for the most part, we talked about it earlier, you're becoming an owner operator. They
Mm-hmm.
leave, you take their chair. And so having them around,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, keep in mind at the beginning, you get to the keys to the
Mm-hmm.
place, you don't even know how to turn off the alarm.
Right.
And so,
Literally. Mm-hmm.
oh, literally. And I
Mm-hmm.
know the word literally is way too
Mm-hmm.
overused
But
these
yeah,
days,
no, in this case, yeah.
but it
Or
applies here.
or more importantly, how do you turn the coffee maker on?
For me too. Yeah. For me too. Yeah. I'm with you because I turn on the coffee machine before I
Mm-hmm.
get the alarm.
Mm-hmm.
And so you want them to, because you want to learn what they do every day.
Right.
Now, the transitional period is something you negotiate during the contract.
Mm-hmm.
And the way I like to do it is as follows. I like to negotiate the longest possible free transition period
Mm-hmm.
possible.
Right.
And depending on the size of the
Mm-hmm.
business or, in the very low end, sometimes that could be a few weeks, a couple of
Mm-hmm.
months, whatever. And then I always like to negotiate the option to keep the seller on board, even in a consulting
Ah,
capacity, to pay
okay.
them for a
Mm-hmm.
longer transition.
Mm-hmm.
Now, understand one thing. I will negotiate that and
Mm-hmm.
teach my clients to negotiate that, but you're not going to want them there that long.
Right.
You just want the comfort
Mm-hmm.
if you need them
Mm-hmm.
there,
Right.
they will be there for
Mm-hmm.
that period of time.
Mm-hmm.
But the goal is to learn the business as
Mm-hmm.
quickly as you
Mm-hmm.
can and get them the hell out of
Mm-hmm.
there because
Right.
it's your business and now you want
Right.
to leave your mark on it.
Right.
And sometimes a seller can, there can be some undue influence by
Mm-hmm.
having them still there,
Right.
especially
Yeah.
depending on their
People
personality.
default to talking to them.
They still
I
think they're the
remember,
boss.
yeah,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
was on a
exactly.
board of a nonprofit, and our executive director resigned, but she wanted to stay on as kind of a consultant. And now she had been with this nonprofit since literally the very beginning. And so her knowledge about it was incredible. But the problem was when we hired the new executive director, people didn't even talk to him. They were so used to dealing with her. They just kept going to her. And she did not say, you need to be talking to Richard. I'm no longer in that role. She just kept going merrily along, serving as the executive director. And, and there was no ill will intended. I mean, it was just and same thing with, if the employees had a question, had a problem, they went to her. They were used to going to her. And we all, as the board, finally had to wish her well.
Right.
And
Yes.
and it did change pretty drastically with what we did, because the new executive director made it theirs, which is
Absolutely.
what should happen. But yeah, it's nice to have them as kind of that mentor, but they sold the business for a reason.
Correct. Correct. And they're, you know what?
Mhm.
Yes, they're a mentor. They're actually, I define it a little differently. I look at them as a resource, a source of
Right.
information, because and to some of the points that you mentioned from the get-go, and we provide in the course a complete Q&A that you want to go, present to the employees,
Right.
such things about, are you planning any changes? Is my job going to change? Are my benefits going to change?
Right.
Is
Because that's
anybody
what they
getting
care
fired?
about.
That's what they care about. Is anybody getting fired? Is the company relocating? All of these important things that you need to be prepared with in advance, because you don't want to make any changes. And having you have to set the rules from the beginning with the employee, saying, I'm the new owner. And if the owner starts to interfere at the beginning, you tell them in a very nice way that don't answer those questions. And I urge that at the beginning, you share an office with the owner. You don't take a separate office. You move your butt
that
into
way
their
you
office.
know what's going on.
What's going on. And you're listening to any conversation. You may have their level of involvement varies.
Right.
But if they have any sidebar conversations with any of the employees, any of the suppliers, any of the customers, it's timeout. That doesn't happen. Okay. And if there's too many events of those, then you've got to get rid of them immediately. Now, I have found over the years, if you follow my prescription for how you deal with these situations during transition, rarely does a problem happen.
Right.
Similarly, you also want to be aware that some employees are going to come to you and say, Bob told me I'm getting a $20,000 raise.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So what well, go see Bob and he'll write you the check. Or because it's blackmail, right? The odd time it's true, often it's not. And so you say, okay, well, let's go see Bob together, or let's go call Bob. And so you have to, those are the type of things that are very important to cut the umbilical cord between the business and the former owner, whether it be employees, suppliers, customers, etc. And it can be done if you do this in a methodical way, the same way you did with the executive director. She probably, her heart was in the right place. She wanted to do well, but she couldn't remove herself from the equation. And so those type of things, it's a matter of you got to get them out of there. And and the same with employees. The goal is if there's any employees that are not right, you got to get the wrong, there's a great book called Good to Great where they talk about you get the wrong people off the bus, get the right people on.
Yeah. And obviously there are times where the employee has their loyalty to that owner for whatever reason. And if they can't transition to the new ownership, then, you do wish them well. What can we do to help you with that transition?
Goodbye and good luck to you.
Yeah. Sometimes it needs to be, don't let the door hit you on the way out. But, if possible, you try and make it.
You try to do it nicely and respectfully. Absolutely.
But yeah, and we've seen that happen where even not even ownership, maybe it's a new manager, a new CEO, new whoever that's in charge. We get that's not the way we've always done it.
Correct. You get that all the time. And it's sometimes the case if you just swallow, you take a step back and you think about it, because the reality, and very often the case is, well, just because you've been doing it for X amount of years doesn't mean you've been doing it the right way. Or there are other options. And so you have some of that friction. It's not, if you do this the right way, a good way, you plan for it, you strategize, and I teach people about the transition and post-purchase priorities and the way you should go about doing this, and all of your due diligence, the way you lay out your due diligence, and whom you meet with, and what you discuss during those meetings, and what your research has compiled. The incidents that we're talking about here are reduced drastically. They are clearly the exception and not the norm.
And to me, it's all about communication.
Yes.
You have to have laid it all out, which, that is probably, and I'm totally guessing here. You mentioned at the start that 95 or 90% of the people who buy a business, it doesn't work.
No, no, no.
And
90% of the people
they
who
don't
try to
they don't
buy a
even make
business
it. Yeah.
don't complete a transaction. Yes.
And I think that's probably because of the communication issues and all sorts of things. Or
Yes.
more importantly, they have bought the business and it's not successful
It's not
because
right.
they
Wrong person.
didn't
Yeah.
lay things out. The new employee or that the old employees didn't know what to expect. Old customers didn't know what to expect. It's just, it really is. And people are okay. I've been doing corporate communications for a very long time. People are fine with you saying, I don't know, but we'll figure it out.
Oh, absolutely.
The second you try and gaslight and all that, no.
No, it doesn't work. And as we're talking about some of this, really, when you do this in a good way,
Mm-hmm.
the incidence of bad outcomes are really,
Right.
really small.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the beauty of buying an existing business, because all these things are known.
Right.
And so the issues related to the employees, the transition, how things are going to work afterwards, and of course all the things that you need to do along the way to get to that point, you solve for that in a really, really good way. When you address, when you have the knowledge and the understanding of how to go about that. So I don't I never want to. It's important for me for our clients to understand, here's the issues that can happen. So you need to be aware of these, and you need to have your solution in your holster, because you may have to remove it, right? And deal with. So that's important. But when you go about the process in an effective, thoughtful manner, with knowledge as your basis, these issues that sometimes people perceive as catastrophes, you can reduce them to incidents.
Yeah, because you were prepared for it.
You were prepared, correct.
Yeah. Now, of course, the other big thing with all of this is money, and you talk in your book, and you've got a lot of great resources on how to finance this. You don't have to write the check for $100,000 yourself or all of those things. And I love that, because I think so many people think it's expensive. But the other thing that of course piques my interest is, it's not like you drive around and there's for sale signs out there, right? Now, I mean, every once in a while, you might see like a small business, that might, this business for sale. But yeah, it's, and so finding those, and we'll get to that in a second. Well, actually, let's do that now. So how do you even find businesses that are for sale?
Okay, so I do want to touch upon the question related to financing, and we'll get into that in a second, but I want to assure your listeners, you could do this for a lot less money than you think.
And I think that is one of the big things that people are scared about. They think it's going to cost so much, and then they actually discover there's a lot of different options and opportunities.
There's a lot of different options and opportunities, absolutely. So finding businesses, there's this, you have to look at this like a funnel. And because you have a lot of publicly listed businesses for sale on various websites, which are for the most part controlled by business brokers, and only business brokers only sell 10% of all businesses. And on those publicly listed businesses for sale, 75% of those businesses don't sell. So while it's a good place to start, understand you're dealing with a very small sampling, even though there's hundreds of thousands of businesses listed there. So the goal is, going back to what we talked about earlier, to first understand what type of business is right for you. And when you get that solidified, it's actually quite easy to find and buy a business, because you know what type of business is right for you. But those initial steps of those publicly listed businesses for sale, I tell people, think about this as a funnel. You're going to put a lot of stuff in at the top, and you want to squeeze out something at the bottom. And it gives
you a lot of great information.
Well, got a lot of information, and the opportunity to do something that is critical in this process, which is to go out and meet with sellers face to face and walk through the 36 questions that we have in our material that have proven themselves over and over and again to be successful, and gets to the bottom of all the issues in a business. You're able to look and say, I'm going to pick 4 categories, I'm going to pick 5 sellers, and I'm going to go have a meeting with 20 sellers. And it's amazing to me how many people I meet with who come to us and they said they just bought the course, and they were looking for a year for business. And that's the reason why they bought it. And I always ask them, in your first 4 months, how many offers did you make? And almost all of them say none. And if that happens, then you're already on the wrong path.
Right. You're never going to actually buy the business.
So they were, when people are equipped and they understand the looking process, then you can start getting into your networking with attorneys, accountants, financial planners, business brokers.
I love that you say, tell your family. They might know somebody.
If you are looking for a business and you're not currently working, so sometimes people have to keep it confidential or what have you. I get that. We're seeing far less of that. People are leaving jobs or losing their jobs and doing this full time. Here's what you got to do. You got to tell everybody. You got to get the word out to everybody in every instance and every opportunity. Meaning, when you go in to pick up your clothes at the dry cleaner and you speak to the owner or what have you, have a chit chat, become intellectually curious about their business. Ask them about it. Tell them you think. Now, you may have no interest whatsoever about buying a dry cleaner, but ask them about their business, what they like, what they don't like, what they find interesting. Did they buy this business? Did they start this business? Do they know of somebody? Here's what I'm thinking of. They'll say, well, what type of business you want to buy? Say, at the beginning, I have no damn idea, but you're going to drill. You're going to drill down to that. So you got to get the word out to everybody. And going back to the original point is, what you want to get to. If you can't find a business through those type of sources, then you're able to do a direct solicitation. And the only way you do a direct solicitation, an effective direct solicitation, is when you know what type of business is right for you. If not, you're not going to send a letter to 33 million companies in America, or how many million there are in Europe or whatever.
But you might have 5 that you know.
But once you know that you, through your working on your skill set and meeting with owners and understanding what it takes to run these different types of business, what the owner does every day, you can drill down. You follow my prescription, you will be able to drill down to know what type of business is right for you. And then you could do a direct solicitation. And one thing I'll give someone, your listeners, a good nugget, and which has proved to be, we've had some crazy success with this. And we've had success. I shouldn't say crazy, because we've had some crazy success. We've also had some very average returns from anywhere from a few percent to 40% response rates.
Wow.
When you finally know what type of business is right for you, and you have a general understanding of geography, and you want to approach them directly, buyers in this space make the terrible mistake that they start sending emails to these people. They're not getting answered. Every small business gets...
Yeah, we see it as spam, and we're like,
they get spam, and they get bombarded by business brokers sending these bullshit letters, pardon my language, that say, we have a buyer for your business and all that. And it's not true. They just want to get a listing. But you take the solicitation, the letter that we have in our course, and it's worked wonders. It's got just a few bullet points, but you have it sent out by your attorney. And your attorney will always be happy to do it, as long as you pay them for their postage and put it on their letterhead. Because here's what happens. Everybody opens an attorney's letter.
Right. They're like, uh-oh. The only thing worse would be a letter from the IRS, right?
The one for the IRS, but you might wait a couple of days till you open that one. But a lawyer's letter, everybody opens, and the way we lay it out for people is right. Well, maybe am I getting sued? Right. So it lays out, we have a client who's looking for a business in your type of industry. Here's the 3 bullets or whatever you want to keep it small, because you don't want to rule out too many. We're not representing them. You don't need to pay us. Here's their contact information. Please get in touch with them. And we've had response rates up to 40%.
Wow.
It's unheard of. Unheard of. And so when you go up front, again, going back to how you go about doing this, you start at the beginning, very wide swath. But if you have to drill down to what type of business is right for you. And then you go, you meet with owners, you do your research, you speak with anybody and everybody you can. You you talk to quiz during business owners. I can't even tell you how many times in the 14 companies that I've purchased that it started out speaking to an owner of a business in a similar or related industry. And through my research about the industry, the competition, what the future looks like, I found another business in a similar industry or related that I ended up acquiring.
Right.
I was looking at a translation business. I love the concept. It was an online translation business. And that led me to buying a legal document preparation business.
Yeah, because it's like you said, it's the network. It's all of these little tentacles that are out there.
Exactly.
And so I love that. But then of course comes the tricky part, the valuation of the business. And so many owners, especially if they've been doing this a long time, that's their baby. And they always see a higher value. I mean, unless it's about to go bankrupt, and you're not going to go there anyway. But So how do you get from this person is selling the most important thing in their life to a reasonable and fair cost? Because, it needs to be fair for both sides.
So I actually wrote an article this week in Forbes called "Disregard the Asking Price of a Business" when you're buying a business. What a seller thinks their business is worth rarely has anything to do with the value.
Right. It's
They've got
almost always much higher.
It's not almost. It's always much higher. They
Mhm.
have a lot of time. They have blood, sweat, tears, and
Right.
beers invested in the
Mhm.
business, tons of emotion.
Mhm.
And very often, what I talk about in the article is people always ask me, how do sellers come up with their asking price? And I tell them they put on a blindfold and they throw a bunch of darts. And
Right.
wherever it comes out,
Or it's, gee, I wish I could get a half a
or I
million
need,
dollars or whatever.
I need $2 million to
Right. I
retire.
want to go buy
So
an island.
yeah, it sounds terrific, but you know
Mhm.
what? That's not
Mhm.
value, and
Mhm.
that's not realistic. And
Mhm.
so a buyer needs to understand. Forget about the asking price.
Mhm.
I mean, you can use it at some point to get a barometer of how
Mhm.
the seller thinks
Right.
about this, or
Mhm.
how did you come up with your
Mhm.
asking price. But you cannot let that
Mhm.
influence your decision, because a buyer needs to establish a
Mhm.
valuation based on quantifiable information.
Mhm.
I've whittled this down. I say whittled down. There's 50 pieces that go into a valuation. We actually
Mhm.
developed an automated valuation tool that you plug in the
Wow. Mhm.
numbers and
Mhm.
answer these questions related to the business. And we include that in the course, and it compiles the
Mhm.
valuation. It's critical that the buyer's valuation must be based on facts,
Right.
actual data,
Mhm.
and quantifiable information
Mhm.
about the business, its threats. How long have they
Mhm.
been in business? What's the
Mhm.
conditions of the financials? What are the looming
Mhm.
threats related to the competition?
Mhm.
What the deal terms look like? Do you need any special licenses? Can an employee
Mhm.
quickly leave and start a competition?
Mhm.
Is there any customer concentration
Mhm.
issues? There's 50
Mhm.
individual questions that you need to
Mhm.
answer, and we take those answers, apply certain weights to
Mhm.
them, multiply it by
Mhm.
the profit, and come up with a
Mhm.
valuation. But the key thing with all of this is, from the buyer's perspective, your valuation has to be defensible.
Mhm.
The seller's valuation typically is not defensible at all, because
Right.
they just
Mhm.
picked it out of the rear
Mhm.
end. Okay, for whatever
Mhm.
reason, they may have had a little influence from a
Mhm.
broker, an accountant, but it
Right.
doesn't reflect the
Mhm.
market. And a buyer needs to understand that the price of the business is what it's worth to you
Mhm.
as the buyer, and your
Mhm.
value. And it's
Right.
nice to have win-win, but the
Mhm.
reality, it doesn't work in these
Mhm.
scenarios. The buyer is taking the majority of risk
Mhm.
in acquiring a
Right.
business, regardless of the deal
Mhm.
terms, even with large seller
Mhm.
deal terms. So win-win goes out the door.
Mhm.
The philosophy is the buyer wins, the seller is reasonably happy.
Right. Mhm.
And so the valuation, again, the key things are,
Mhm.
you don't want to pull these rules of thumbs.
Mhm.
People use rules of thumb. I always say rules of thumb are dumb, because no two businesses are exactly the
Right.
same.
Yeah.
But
I mean,
so
it's
you need,
nice to know competition, but.
yeah, I mean, it gives you a bit of a
Mhm.
parameter, but
Mhm.
that's not the basis, because
Mhm.
you have to do it based on the facts on the ground,
Mhm.
right? What is the business? What are the
Mhm.
fundamentals to the
Mhm.
business? What are potential
Mhm.
issues that could come up? What are the
Mhm.
strengths, weaknesses, etc.?
Mhm.
It's not a SWOT
Mhm.
grid process.
Mhm.
It's much deeper than
Mhm.
that. Some of those pieces weigh into the equation,
Right.
but the goal being is it's quantifiable,
Mhm.
it's defensible,
Mhm.
and you make the determination.
Right.
Similarly, if you find a business that meets all your criteria, and it's the right business for
Mhm.
you, you all the benefits that it's going to
Mhm.
derive. That you're going to help the lives of others, increase your financial
Mhm.
situation, be able to keep in mind, for
Mhm.
every dollar of value that you add into the business, you probably get four afterwards.
Mhm.
And so all these things, so you have to also be prepared to pay a
Mhm.
premium
Mhm.
for a really good business.
Right.
A garbage business never cheap enough, but a good
Mhm.
business, be prepared to pay a
Mhm.
premium,
Right.
because it's going to provide you with a
Mhm.
platform for your life.
Mhm. And like we said, it is established.
Yes,
All of that is already in place, and
there's
what you're
value.
doing then is growing it.
It's growing in. And also, you want to make sure that it's a business that's going to
Mhm.
transition well to you. We talked about
Mhm.
this. Growth is very sexy,
Mhm.
but stability is valuable. You
Mhm.
want to make sure that when you take over the business,
Mhm.
when I say you want to make sure it's
Mhm.
through your research and your
Mhm.
homework, and putting,
Right.
the proper conditions, terms in
Mhm.
place related to the deal, sometimes the
Mhm.
performance-based deal, but you want to make sure the business,
Mhm.
all things remaining status quo,
Mhm.
that the business is going to continue the same.
Right.
With you as
Yeah.
the new owner,
Mhm.
you learn it, and then you
Mhm.
can grow it.
Right. And maybe sell it.
Oh, well, absolutely. I've sold a bunch of them. And the nice
Mhm.
thing with selling
Right.
them, for every dollar value add, you get a multiple
Mhm.
of that. I
Right.
mean, and sometimes you run it for your whole life and then
Mhm.
sell it, and you want to run the business like you
Mhm.
have to sell it.
Mhm.
But there's all these incredible
Mhm.
benefits that
Mhm.
that come along for the ride
Right.
through business
Right.
ownership.
Well, oh my gosh, Richard, we've only got a couple minutes left. And we didn't talk about the 10 commandments or the golden rule. We didn't talk about why you need to worry about profit and not the sexy product. We didn't talk about independent versus franchise, which means that yes, people need to get your information to find all of that out, but it also means we need to have you on again. So hopefully we will be able to do that, because there's so much more to be talking about. Like I said, the book's over 500 pages. And it's because there is so much detail. And I think the thing that I came away with was, this is not a quick, easy process. When you're thinking about this, you need to be prepared that it's going to take a lot of time and inner reflection, all sorts of things like that, to really decide if this is what you want to do. And so, folks, if you're just wanting the easy way out, stay the employee.
Stay the employee. And you know what, it does. If you do this the right way, it should take you 6 months.
Right.
I've read people taking years. It's ridiculous. I lay it out in a way that it really should take 6 months.
And it is
people.
about, how do you determine right away what the right business is? Or are you just throwing darts at the dartboard and hoping something hits?
Well, if you throw the majority of people, and that's why 90% don't complete a transaction, because they're throwing darts and they don't go about this in the right way.
Sounded good.
It sounded great. They're all over the place. And it's there. They have the too quick to click syndrome, too quick to click. So they're all over the internet.
Right.
But if you do this in a methodical manner, it should take you, you educate yourself and you ramp yourself up to become an expert in this, because you can follow the material. You can. Takes 4 months to find it, a month to negotiate, a month to do the due diligence and close it. So you really can do it in 6 months without question if you do this the right way. And I would love to come back and talk about the golden rules and the 10 commandments and franchises versus independent businesses. I hope you'll have me back, because you're a good study, and I love the fact that you read the materials. I greatly appreciate it in
depth. But
you know what is it? I think you'll find. I think you'll find that it's an easy read, because I write the way I talk. And so it's not like Harvard textbook. This is real world, real world information.
Definitely. And the other thing that we didn't talk about is, what if you're on the other side? How do you make it a business that somebody wants to buy? Because I'm me, my business is me. Nobody's going to buy it. But what if I have a business? This is true,
they may. So there's three things related to businesses from the selling part, and we can go into it in another time, because there really are a few bumper stickers that people should do in their business today that'll not only make their business better today, it'll make it more valuable when the time comes to sell. And those are, you need to look at this for the inverse. Like if you have a business you want to sell, you want to look at it through the lens of a buyer, because what they're looking for. And if you put some of those components into place right away, like, run it like you have to sell it, what keeps you up at night, God forbid what happened, you get hit by a Pepsi truck, what happens to the business, those type of things, you get those things in place, it makes your business more valuable, infinitely more valuable.
Well, and, things do happen, and so if you have a business and your heirs have to sell it, you want it to be something good for them. And so that's all part of this process.
Correct.
But, oh my gosh, Richard, this really has been absolutely fascinating. But tell people how they find you and connect with you. And then what are the services that you provide?
The easiest way is go to richardparker.com. richardparker.com. We've got hundreds of free articles, reports, what have you. They can learn about the process of buying a business from there if they're interested. Our courses, there's courses available on the site, and they'll allow to get themselves immersed in the world of buying business. And I think that leads to the answer to your second question, which is, how people think about this, or parting words, if you will, which is, I fundamentally believe, and I've seen it repeatedly over the years, if you have any inclination to get into the world of entrepreneurship, whether you're working now or you're unemployed or what have you, you owe it to yourself to learn about what's out there. And what are the options that are available to you? Now, you may do some or none of them, but at the very least, you owe it to yourself to go through the process to find out what's involved. Because one of the things you brought up earlier is the cost of purchasing a business. Many people think that, this is only for big company or deep-pocketed people, and nothing could be further from the truth, because the amount of leverage that you can get through various lending institutions, but seller financing, and 91% of our clients finance their deal through the seller, not 100% of it, but a massive component of it. And so again, it comes back to learn about these things. Find out what's involved with buying a business. Read the articles. If it makes sense for you, buy the course. I'm not making this pitch to buying the course, but if it makes sense for you and you want to proceed with it, get your hands on the information and go through the process and make the determination. I think people will find in short order that, hey, this is doable. This is real life. I can realize this dream. I can make this happen. This is not just for rich folks. This is really something that I can actualize. And so the intimidation factor or the disregarding factor, thinking I can't do it, or, this is way above my pay scale, is so wrong. I'm a guy from a lower middle class background with no fancy education, never went to university. I'm by no means the sharpest tool in the shed. I know this little world of buying businesses. And I can assure you that if a dumb guy like me can do this over and over and over again successfully, anybody could do this.
Oh my gosh, what a fabulous way to end the program. Like I said, this has been fascinating. We will have you on again because you have so much great information to share with people. But until then, I'm Deb Creer. I've been speaking with Richard Parker. And until next time, everyone have a great day.
Tune in for our next program for even more trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. The Business Power Hour, hosted by Deb Creer, is proud to be part of the C-Suite Network.